Start things off, so talking about keys to a successful church social media strategy. And social media is one of those areas where we see it rapidly growing in terms of a communications platform. It's been, exponentially growing over the past few years, and it's certainly something that's not going away anytime soon. And we see so much in social media as terms of news, understanding what's happening in the lives of others that we know. But we see businesses and organizations, churches included, who are really taking advantage of these tools and being able to use them to their fullest. So that's what I want to help you guys accomplish as well as we get into this. So first thing I want to discuss, and I'm sure many of you guys maybe already have answers to this, but I just want to give you guys some examples as to why churches should be using social media. And again, this is probably something that you're not, I imagine here being to a webinar about social media strategies, you already understand that social media is a very important and valuable platform. But we'll go through this, and I just want to give a few key points as to why social media is so valuable to churches. Number one, we understand its exposure. Being able to provide information about your church, helping to get seen through social engagement. This could come through people interacting with your church online and having those interactions seen by their friends and peers on social networks. Even search engines index social media pages. So all of that is valuable for the exposure aspect. On top of that, being able to promote your church, and I don't mean that in a salesy kind of sense, but a promotion in the sense of being able to publish information about your church, being able to get information out there into the hands of people where they are at in social media. So things with your church location, even having links to your church website so they can go learn more about it, promoting events, updates that are happening at your church, special things that are going on, needs that are in the church, and more. So there are plenty of opportunities to promote your church through social media. Engagement is a huge one. So many people now turn to social media to be able to speak with companies and organizations. So it's nice to be able to have that engagement aspect of it. When somebody comments on posts, somebody messages you directly through a social media platform. And so it's become a popular way to be able to answer questions for people and to be able to speak to people. And then, of course, the personalization aspect of it. The beauty of social media is it kind of gives you, it reminds you that these companies or these organizations are ran by people, and they're consisting of people. And so having that human element of it is one of the biggest perks of social media. And so being able to make your church's online presence more personable and having it to where people can engage with and feel that there's a real heart behind the church is another powerful aspect of social media. So these are all great things. So now we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to give you guys essentially an outline, some steps and some tips on ways that we can strategize and be intentional with our social media approach. The first thing that I want to go ahead and get into is talking about roles and responsibilities within your church social media environment. So as you are getting ready to implement this new strategy for social media after we're done with this webinar maybe, or when you are at that point where you're getting people together to talk about it. So I understand now many people who are watching this, maybe you don't necessarily have a team that you're working with. Maybe you are consisting of a pastor who is currently taking on all of this to help your church out. Or maybe you are a secretary who has been asked to dive further into this area so that your church can get more involved in social media. Or maybe you are a team. Maybe you are part of a director or staff that is working together to build your team and get your social media strategy more up to date with things. Churches of all sizes could be in this area. So I don't know which area you are in, but regardless of that, we're going to talk about a few specific things that you should think of as you are getting your roles and responsibilities laid out. First of all, whether you're a one-man show or you have a whole team behind you, there needs to be a team leader. And the purpose of this is to have a dedicated person who oversees your social media. This person can be your point person, so if you have any questions about what to post or how you should post it, when you should post it, you need to have one person at least who is dedicated to understanding your social media strategy and who is essentially the person to go to with questions and can also moderate and kind of filter anything that comes in from other contributors on your team to make sure that you guys are all of one accord. And part of being one accord will go into having a code of ethics. Now this code of ethics I'm referring to is not just necessarily only about your church's social media, making sure that they understand there are things that are okay to post about and things that are not. But also into other areas of their lives, because it's very likely that people will see them as representatives of your church, even through their personal pages and things like that. And so making sure that they understand that they need to be using discernment in terms of what they should be sharing, posting about, etc. Taking a step back from the computer sometimes, or the phone, or whatever they're using, and thinking about what they're going to post before they post it, and how that represents their church and really Christianity as a whole, how they represent Christ through that. So having a code of ethics is a great way just to make sure everybody is on the same page and nobody gets in trouble for posting something, or you can go back to your code of ethics and say, hey, this is what we talked about, this is what we agreed with, and you don't have to worry about getting into a huge fight later on. So having a code of ethics is a huge help. And of course, having so many cooks in the kitchen, one thing you always want to be mindful of is consistency. So as people are posting about things, you want to try and be as consistent about it as you can. This includes also like their commitment to consistent posting and engagement, so people understand if they are taking on this responsibility of being part of the social media team, just having an understanding with them, like how often they ought to be expected to post something. Doesn't mean they have to do something every day. You can line that out however works best with your church strategy, but just having a team that is knows that they are the people responsible for this, and it all affects the church, and so they want to be consistent in how they handle that. All right, so apart from roles and responsibilities, now let's talk about this, because I think this is one of the more, I'm going to use a big word here, enigmatic terms of social media, is setting your goals. You guys probably have thought about this before in terms of getting into social media and looking at it and going, well, so having social media, what do you actually want to accomplish from this? What is the purpose that your church is using social media for? And what do you see as attainable goals that you want to have in your social media platforms? So setting goals and defining what success looks like for you is going to be paramount before you start laying out a strategy, because that will then dictate how that strategy needs to unfold. So the first goal that I think is one of the bigger ones that we see right away is growth. And growth in terms of followers on social media, growth in terms of activity on social media, seeing that people are doing more and more active in with your social media platforms. So these are things that we're going to look at a bit more in depth later on in the presentation. And apart from just growth in followers, as I mentioned, activity, so engagement. So this could be things with your comments, your messages, your actions. And this doesn't necessarily mean, completely on the side of like your goal being how that people are messaging you, but your goal can also include the fact of how quickly you are responding to them and getting back to them. And so setting goals for like that for yourself, so that you can make sure that your social media is not being neglected. Because sure, a lot of people could be following you and posting stuff on your timeline or your Twitter channel or your page, whatever. But you want to have a goal for yourself as well in terms of getting back to people and being able to post content that is engaging with them as well. And then, of course, we want to talk about making sure that you can track these goals. So we will get a bit more into some specifics here as we progress. But whatever goals that you set on a strategy, you want to make sure that those goals are ones that you can track, that you can look at information on and be able to see what works and what doesn't, and to be able to come back to it so that you can understand how you need to possibly make changes down the road, or what your successes are. Now, part of a social media strategy, this one some might say is optional. I will tell you this is a huge, huge help though with social media, is having a real schedule for it. And by that I mean creating a schedule that you stay consistent with for your social media purposes. So one of the things that a schedule needs to tell you is your frequency. How often are you going to post new content? Again, this is not the most, I mean, this is a great thing to have when you're very frequent, when you're able to post new stuff every day. Some churches out there have so many different pools of resources to pull from. They can go and talk to so many different ministers to get more about ministries that they can post. They can get data information from all sorts of areas in their church. Other churches may not feel like they have a ton to talk about all throughout the week. Maybe, just something with a special event here and there. Maybe they just want to, post a little bit about what was said during the last service. Whatever it is, don't worry too heavily on how frequent. Just be committed to your frequency. So if you're going to post, if you're going to say, hey, I'm just going to make sure I get something out there at least a couple times a week. That's a good place to start. Just a couple times a week would be something that is not very difficult, and you can jump in there. You can use information from what you've got in your bulletin right now, or you can use something that was from a sermon that the pastor said, or from the part of Scripture that your church is going with or going through right now. So there's things that you can pull from right now. So determining that frequency will help you kind of then be able to set up the next part, which is your time and days. Now, this is something where it's going to require experimentation. You can go online, and there's all these resources out there that will tell you, like, oh yeah, if you're doing Facebook, you want to make sure that it's on this time, at these days, these are the highest engagement. That's something I would say don't rely too heavily on. It can provide maybe a good starting point if you're looking for one, but keep in mind that every audience is different, and your audience is going to be different than the overall mass of audiences that they survey for all of these things. So I would suggest, going through, just picking one to start with. Say like, hey, Monday at noon, I'm going to post something about Sunday's service, like a recap, and see how that does. And then as you go through and you kind of try some different days, try some different times, see if you can find, you go through and you're experimenting with it, see if you can find some consistency where you tend to see more engagement from people on. It's going to be all over the place most of the time, but if you can find those times where you go, hey, I notice like if I wait till the afternoons, I get a lot better engagement, or hey, maybe it's first thing in the morning when people are getting up, they're having their coffee, and they're checking Facebook then. So you can find what works best for your church audience, and then nail that down and build your schedule around those days and times as you get that figured out. Also, be sure to plan ahead. It's sometimes there will be in-the-moment things that you can post about. We have so much going on right now with live streaming and Facebook Live and all that stuff, which are great. And it's kind of fun sometimes when I'm on and I just kind of as a surprise see, oh hey, like my church is streaming about something right now, and it's not even Sunday. What's this all about? But there could be things too where it's like if you are thinking about, hey, I want to make sure that we get out there and we let our church know what the new series is that's going to be that we're going to be going through, the new sermon series. Take some time, put together an image for that, and post that out there so that people can see it and they know well in advance, and or at least give yourself enough time to make it look nice, and think, be intentional again about the way that you're doing it. What is the purpose of the post? Have that laid out and make sure that it's accomplishing that goal for you. All right, so now this is one that is not necessarily something you can teach, but it's something that is very important, and that's finding your voice. And by that, I mean finding the voice that your church uses. Anytime that you are looking at a company or a marketing strategy or anything like that, you will notice certain companies just have their thing. You will just see like, man, we all know what an Apple commercial looks like. We all know what Nike looks like when it's putting stuff out there. You'll see social media channels of companies that are doing really well, and they've just found their voice. They've found what their audience loves to hear, what their audience engages with. And so that's the first thing, is you want to make sure that you are creating content on social media that is engaging with your followers. And I can give you an example. This is a great place where I can give you an example of some stuff where working with my church's social media, some of the things that we found to be the most engaging. First of all, of course, whenever we are posting things about ministries that we have a large number of volunteers in, that's always great because the volunteers love to share about that stuff as well, and they get the word out really well. when it comes to that. But also, one of the things that I found a lot of more kind of general congregants and members of the church who like to share, I'll sit in on a Sunday service and I will listen through the pastor's sermon, and anytime that I can think of something that helps to summarize a point from what the pastor is saying, I like to take and jot that down, and just as much as I can, or I like to grab pieces that really speak to me. And this is great for me too, by the way. I love it because I actually find myself much more attentive and listening throughout the service because I am just looking for notes to put down. And so I'm just listening, I'm hanging on to every word that's being said, trying to, as soon as like something's coming through that I'm like, oh wow, I can really grab onto what's being talked about right here. Like I'll just hang on to it so I don't forget any of the quote and write it down as I go. And for me, I've got my phone out, I've got the notes app open. I type all the stuff down there, I copy and paste it later. For you might be easier with pen and paper, whichever is better. So that's a great thing. It's a great exercise. I would suggest if you're in the service with the pastor to be able to do something like that, because then later I'll go through and I'll mention some tools and stuff I use. But I'll go through and create a graphic and post that quote from the service onto the graphic and share that on Facebook later, and Instagram and all that stuff, and people love it. It is just something where it's like creates an illustration that they can latch onto, so that even if they weren't there at the service, those who were there at the service, they love it because they go, oh yeah, that was something that really spoke to me while I was there too, or yes, and I love when he brought this point up as well. And then people who weren't there, they can get a taste of like, okay, I can see where the voice is of this church. Like, where's the heart? What's the message that they are bringing? So I suggest that as a thing you can try and see how your congregation reacts to it online. Now, apart from frequency that we talked about with the scheduling aspect of it, consistency. So we talked about consistency in terms of, talking about consistency in terms of voice here. So talking about consistency in the sense of that no matter who is posting to your social media, nobody should ever feel like that doesn't sound like your church. If you understand what I'm saying. This comes back to actually to the team leader, who's a person you want to kind of like moderate this content and maybe edit it if need be or something like that. But any good plan in terms of promotion, in terms of speaking out to an audience, you want to make sure that no matter who is on there and what they're saying, that it's all consistent and rolling with what your church has to say. And so other parts that we've talked about, the team leader, the code of ethics, and how that goes about, like just make sure that you don't have somebody who hops on there who maybe is just posting something random or doesn't seem in character with the rest of your posts. I'll give you another great example here from personal experience. So we had one gentleman who was on our social media as an editor or a contributor a while ago. And he was one of our sound tech guys and stuff too, so he followed along very closely. But he posted something once about when we had an incident and a laptop had been stolen from the church, and it was just a very odd post that he made about saying like, hey, someone stole the laptop, and then it was like a almost sarcastic use of a Bible verse towards them. And overall, it just kind of like felt like it left a bad taste in people who read it, in the mouths of those who read it. I remember when I saw it, I was just like, oh, like, who did that? I don't know. And so we had a talk with that afterwards, and it was something to, we realized it was just a time where that person no longer needed to be on that side of things. It just wasn't a good fit anymore because there was some problems there. So that's something too where that may come up from time to time, where you have people who don't necessarily use it correctly, but again, that's why a team lead can be so valuable, who can be your moderator and make sure that stuff isn't happening. And you've heard me say it a few times up to this point already, but this is important. Be intentional. So when you are speaking to your audience, speak to them with a purpose. Speak to them with a point in mind. If you're talking about an event, make sure that it's clear that you want them to come, and that's why you're telling them about it. If you are talking about a sermon series that's going on, make sure that it's clear what the message of that is and what you want people to be able to come away with it. If you are promoting something that mentions that there's a need for volunteers in certain ministries, make sure that you make it clear that you are looking to your audience to step up and find some areas in the church where they can volunteer and be a part of it. And we'll talk a bit more too about ways to help people take action once they see these things. So, and again, as I'm going through these, before we go on to the next section here, I just want to remind you guys, I see Chris is over there typing, so if you guys do have anything that comes to mind, if you have any questions or any other tips or advice through these sections, be sure to hop on there with them and let them know, and then afterwards we can address those things and we'll have some more Q&A too at the end. So Chris is up there with a big thumbs up like, oh yeah. So, loving it. All right, so the next section that I'm going to get into, we've talked a bit about some of the things to think about as you're putting your strategy together. The next section I want to talk to, because I know this is an area where so many churches often struggle, especially when you're put into a position that this is a new thing for you or something that you're not 100% comfortable with as you go into it, creating content. So we've talked about like, yeah, you just got to have engaging content, right? Easy peasy, right? Like no big deal. Well, okay, that's maybe not the truth. It can be difficult sometimes to think like, well, what am I going to put up here? And I've given you guys some examples of things I've done that may or may not work for you, but here's some examples of ways that you can create content on a consistent level, and really this content should see some good engagement from. So one of the first things I want to bring up as a suggestion to you when you're looking for sources for content, blog posts. And I don't necessarily mean like other bloggers. I mean like blog posts that you guys write on your website, because this is one of the biggest areas where you will see people engaging, sharing, communicating with you on, and being able to inspire and educate and motivate others through. So blog posts are a fantastic tool that really most churches these days just aren't taking full advantage of. And I just want to encourage you guys that is something I highly suggest looking into, just because it will be one of the areas where you'll often find as a great resource for being able to share stuff online, but also for people to engage with them as well. Make sure when you have a blog on your website that you include some form of sharing button on there, just so it's nice and easy. So when somebody comes to your website, so let's kind of paint this scenario. Somebody comes to your church website and they're reading a devotional that you post or a blog from the pastor or whatever it could be, a women's ministry blog, then they can go on there, and if they see this as something as content that a friend of theirs could really look for. And I know I do that all the time. When I'm looking at stuff, I'm like, man, who do I know that I'm friends with on social media that could benefit from this content? And I think of that often. And so I'll be the guy who goes there, and so many others who will look for those share buttons so that there's a quick and easy way for me to get this information out there, to be able to help my church by sharing that, hey, my church is doing this kind of stuff, but also as a means of like, I'm doing this, you're kind of vicariously encouraging my friends through me by having these features available. So I find them very important. So with blog posts, now here's another suggestion when it comes to that, and I've heard this from other bloggers and stuff of something, just one of the approaches that they might take is to write out a long blog article. We're talking, 1,500 words plus. Write something out long. That's good for Google too. Google loves to see that stuff, lots of good content on your website. Write out these long articles and then break them down. Figure out what your points are, what your speaking points are, the main ideas that you want to get across. Find those bits in there, and then just use those bits little by little throughout the week. So if you don't want to have to write out a blog every single day or even every week, but you want to be able to get the word out about there so people come to it, people read it, it does its job in terms of getting the word out there, then you can take those little snippets and take them and put them into tweets, put them into your Facebook posts, put them on a picture or a graphic, and then send them off on Instagram, whatever the case may be. You can take those and break it up and then link back to your blog article so people can read the whole thing. But that's a great tactic to be able to generate some traffic to your website as well, thinking out in terms of more promotional aspect, but for them to be able to have little chunks that they can swallow, little bites they can swallow at a time, and then they can go and read the whole thing when they want to. So that's just another suggestion in terms of how you can go to that approach. All right, so the next part of creating the content, we're going to talk about sharing the love. Inviting your team to all come together and collaborate for creating and publishing posts. So a team lead is not necessarily meant to be the person who just runs the whole outfit, but they're a leader. So they want to have their team come together. And maybe, again, if you're in a position where you are solo on this right now, but you're looking for those people who are capable in your congregation, who are willing and want to come and have an opportunity. So you're looking to build that team and getting them together. So you want to think of how you can collaborate with them and create and publish posts for yourself. One thing that I definitely recommend is a tool to be thinking of as you guys are working together on stuff, without having them just automatically just go and post everything up on Facebook and you have to go look at it later and make sure nothing weird got up there that you didn't want. Using file sharing systems, and I know a lot of businesses are using this now. We here at Sharefaith love these things for all the stuff that we do with digital content. But using file sharing systems to share images, ideas, design files, whatever you want to use on social media. So like some great examples out there could be things like Dropbox or Box or Google Drive, OneDrive. There's so many different ones to choose from. You can go out there and find what's going to be the best that everybody is on board with. And that's the biggest thing, is just finding whatever's going to be the best fit for your team to collaborate together with. So I highly recommend looking into something like that to help you out.
G Suites for nonprofits.
Oh yes, well yeah, and Chris just throws out G Suites for nonprofits. So Google Suites is a sweet deal. So if you guys are looking for something that you can use that will be just an easy resource, but you don't necessarily have a ton of funds to be able to go into buying, big box folder or a big Dropbox account or whatever, check out Google Apps or G Suites if it's been renamed that for nonprofits, and look into that, because that is something where you guys can create your own, your own emails and everything through, and be able to have a shared drive of. It's much more than what you would get on a personal account. And it's free for nonprofits. So you just go on, submit your information about your church, and then they get you set up. All right. And so another area, final area talking about with content creation for this presentation. And again, if there's anything, once we're all said and done here, that you guys are, you have some more ideas on, love to hear those from you guys. I'd love to hear what the church is using. So creating content, seeking inspiration for that content. I understand, I've thrown out some ideas, but I'm just kind of give you a more bulleted list here of some different things that churches, are really seeing the most engagement from or the most fruit from in terms of inspiration for their posts. So Bible verses, clearly the Word of God is the best place to start. Looking at where you guys are, I talked about like going through and maybe posting some of the verses that you guys are going through right now together, or Bible study. Quotes from the senior pastor, or any pastor. If you guys want to share stuff too, like what's something that's on the heart of the youth minister or the elder minister or whoever you guys want to grab something from. Inspirational graphics and cartoons, those are fun. Something where it's like you find a fun, clean, Christian appropriate comic strip somewhere, or you guys find a graphic that really speaks to you or has a great message to it. Don't share the like for Jesus, scroll for Satan stuff. I'm going to throw that out there. Like, nobody likes that stuff. I love Jesus, but I don't promote that stuff. So just a word to the wise there. Video testimonials are huge. I love seeing what churches are doing now with social media and getting video testimonials, and this could be of leadership, this could be of people who are getting baptized in the church or becoming members, children in the ministry. It's always great to get real people from the ministry and having their testimonial shared, and in ways having that testimonial reach others, while also showing the heart of your church as well. Part of video baptism videos and images. So you see so many times nowadays where people who are doing baptisms at their church, they will live stream it, or they will get video of it and then be able to put that video online later. And nowadays with the technology that we have, it's so easy. It's so easy. You have your phone, which is this supercomputer in your pocket that you can pull out, and nowadays the camera on these things are just ridiculous. So even if you don't have a professional camera person or know how to do that with all that, you can use your phone. Even consumer camcorders these days are getting ridiculous with just the quality that they have to offer. So these are things that are very simple to put together. Just record, and then it makes it easier, and many of these platforms are easier than ever to be able to share this stuff online too. Event announcements and recaps. of course, is always popular. You see a lot of times where sometimes people do this too much to the point where they don't post enough other content. I recommend keeping a mix of good stuff, but having some event announcements and recaps, of course, is a huge benefit with social media. Trending topics and hashtags. This is where you get more into maybe the more marketing approach, church marketing approach, but looking at like what are things that people are talking about right now. Like people are going to have questions about things like, right now, as much as I don't like the idea of like using it as a promotional base, but like right now you see stuff that's going on with disaster, and this is a time where you can look at things like that and you go, hey, this is a time where we can speak into the lives of people who are questioning what's going on right now. Why is this happening? This is a time where you can get the word out there about other Christian ministries that are actively working together, or how your church or ministry is doing something right now to be able to help with these situations. So trending topics and hashtags, of course, are going to be something that it's just good to hear from the church on. Don't get into a word to the wise against politics. Don't go crazy, about that kind of stuff. But things where it's just like real life situations going on right now with real people, that want to understand where your church is at that, and oftentimes too just want to hear like what does the Bible say about these things, and where is God in these moments. So those are beautiful opportunities to be able to share that with them. Okay, so now I want to get into the tools side of things. I'm sure many of you guys are excited about this part, understanding what tools are out there. First one I'm going to dive into, I'm going to cover actually these first few here. I want to bring up, because this is a Sharefaith Academy webinar, the kinds of tools that come with Sharefaith that are already there that you can totally start ramping up your social media with and make better. So we talked about blogging, and we talked about some different things where your church website would come into play. So your church website can have tons of shareable content, blog posts, sermon recordings, event announcements, and it's also able to embed your social feeds onto so that people can actively go onto your website and see, oh hey, here's their social media feed right here. Here's their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram, whatever, and be able to click to follow that right away. They can see the feed on there. So there's different options that you can give in that respect, but your website is a great tool to be able to connect with your social media. Also, the church mobile app. Having a mobile app where people can go to a Connect screen and be able to go straight to a Facebook page from there, or Twitter, or be able to see posts that you guys are sharing on Twitter and Facebook. Having something like that is also a great tool to have so that people can go and download that and be able to stay more connected with your church that way. And then, of course, media. So one of the things that Sharefaith has been doing the longest for, you have over 80,000 graphics and counting. New stuff comes out every week. So you go to the graphics library, you've got everything you need to be able to find stuff for your sermon series, so then you can fashion that into your social media graphics. And we've got some cool stuff coming out that we'll talk more about, not in this webinar, but stay tuned to our newsletter, and you'll get to hear about some awesome new things that we're coming out with. I believe as early as next month, that will be even better for this purpose. So stay tuned for that. All right, so now apart from the Sharefaith tools that are available, there's some other awesome things that you may or may not be taking advantage of right now that I want to take some time to discuss. One of the biggest things out there is social media management software. So software like Hootsuite, Buffer, Grum, these are a few that, just of the many out there that can help you oversee and schedule posts across multiple channels and multiple pages so you guys can keep everything together. So I've used Hootsuite before. That's a great one for being able to do stuff with, you're running a Facebook and a Twitter and an Instagram. Grum is the only one I've listed here that actually is a real publisher, like auto publisher for Instagram. Instagram is really funny. So most of the stuff out there like Hootsuite and Buffer even, you can't necessarily auto post to Instagram at this time. Like you can just set a reminder for yourself like, hey, it's that time you wanted to make an Instagram post, which can be, it's helpful, but it doesn't, for a lot of people it's just like, I'd rather have it do more and actually post it for me. Grum is where that comes in, and so that's a cool platform you can go look at if your church is using Instagram, or that's a big platform you guys are working with right now to look into. Also, there are some awesome mobile apps out there. I'm telling you guys, you got this supercomputer in your pocket, make use of it. There are some fantastic mobile apps out there that just make it even better. Chris is like looking at his phone and like shamedly putting it down. But Most of us have supercomputers in our pockets these days. I don't know. But anyways, so there are some awesome apps out there that you guys can get. Some ones that I mentioned here, Adobe Spark. I'm a big Adobe Spark fan. I love Adobe Spark. I've used it so much for being able to just quickly do a design and get it out there, and I don't even need to know that much because they have so much already kind of pre-done for you that you just put in what you want to say, pick the right graphic to go with it, and off it goes, and you can post it. Facebook Pages is a very, it's an obvious one. So if you've got your Facebook page running, you want to get the Pages app so you have total control over what you need to do with your posts and everything onto your pages. And then Instagram has some helpful apps too. So again, going into if you're into Instagram, or not even, it just creates the stuff that is formatted for Instagram, can be used elsewhere. Stuff like Boomerang. There's the Layout app, which is actually the one I use most for just about any layout that I'm doing with graphics on my phone. So it's just a cool way you can do more with design and fun, fun different ideas for your posts using those kinds of things. And there's so many more. There are tons of articles out there. I highly recommend going to check out and just seeing what kinds of stuff you can find for apps after this. And then lastly on this list, but certainly not least, workflow automation software. There are these services out there. A couple that I can recommend. Zapier is one of them, and there's another one that's I've got it written there as IFTTT. That's short for if this then that. So these are really cool things where basically they have trigger responses. So in a circumstance that something happens, or if you post something, or somebody posts something to your social media channel, you can trigger events to take place so that these can be combined for different uses. So they call them recipes or what have you, but it allows you to connect certain things, two completely different software pieces usually, or two different social media channels, and be able to get them all to work together in a way. So I have some examples here. I actually took some time to find some that I find to be probably the most straightforward and helpful right from the beginning of different recipes you could use with something like this. So here are a few examples. First one, you can save your tweets to Google Sheets, which is on Google Drive. So if you want to keep a record of your tweets, so from Twitter, you post something and you want to make sure that you have a record of when and what was said and everything, that way you guys just have something where if you go, hey, this was one that really took off. People really seem to engage with this well. You can go back into your Google spreadsheet and be able to see all that and how well they did and what times they were posted and everything. So you just got all the information that you possibly need from it. So anytime you post to Twitter, automatically it gets sent over to Google Sheets for you. Another one that probably a lot here would find really helpful if you're running Facebook and Twitter is having it so that it syncs your profile pics together. So if you have, every time you update your Facebook page and you put a new profile image there, it'll automatically update your Twitter profile pic as well. I love that because I hate trying to do all that together because I will inevitably forget about one in the process of updating another. So that just saves me some headache there. When we're talking about software like Buffer, so if you want to have, if you're using Buffer, which is one of those automation softwares where it's basically making sure that you can manage everything. If you create a schedule in Buffer for all your stuff to go out post-wise, you can sync that to Google Calendar. So if you guys are using Gmail or Google Calendar or anything like that, it just is a way where maybe it's a little bit easier for you to access it and sync it up with other calendars that you have, just so you know exactly what's going out and when. This one is something that I think is actually really helpful too, is if you are running Instagram and Twitter, if you post an Instagram picture, now for those of us who are familiar with Instagram, you'll know when you go to make a post, there's an option where you can connect your Facebook and your Twitter and other accounts, so that way you can choose to post everything simultaneously, which is really handy, right? Except in the case of Twitter, it doesn't give you a picture. If you go to your Twitter channel after you do that, all it does is link to the Instagram post. So that's okay, but it would be better to actually have an image that people see as they're scrolling through their Twitter feed. So this will make it so that when you post an Instagram picture, rather than just sending them a link to the Instagram picture, the software would automatically make a native image for Twitter as well and send it there too. So that's a really handy feature too. Big one for sermon recordings, for announcement videos, for teasers about upcoming events at your church, whatever you might be doing video for. Anytime you're posting something to YouTube, have that auto share to Facebook, to Twitter, to other platforms. So that's something where, again, you don't have to worry about it, and it sends a post out there so that you don't have to then go back to those channels and re-upload the video and do everything through there as well. So that just makes that nice and easy to be able to share that. And the last one I'm going to give you here is your blog posts, auto-sharing those to Facebook and Twitter. Obviously, that's a huge thing too, so if you're of the mind where you just want to go ahead and get the post out there and have people see it, rather than the approach we talked about, which not for everybody, the one that I mentioned with the idea of like the long post and taking bites of it. If you just want to get the blog post out there though and make sure that it's getting shared and people are seeing it, then you can set that up so that whenever you make a new blog post on your website, automatically that stuff goes to Facebook and Twitter too, so people can go read it. So those are just some examples of some different ways that you could use that workflow automation software. And as I said, there's Zapier or If This and That, so you can look into both of those. If This and That is free, and it has, but it's a very simple system to use. I've used it before, and just for personal stuff, it's great. And if you're only doing like one thing where you're just like any of these recipes would be fine on If This and That. But Zapier has access to more programs. If This and That has like 200 something, Zapier has like 500. Zapier is much more professional too, so it's one that you have to pay for. But then if you have multiple Facebook pages or multiple Twitter accounts or anything like that, then you can put it all together in Zapier and manage it that way, and have much more complex connections if you want to like make it so that there's more done when a certain action takes place. But like I would say, start with If This and That and see what's that and go from there. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. So before I am finished with my presentation, and I know we're getting down to the wire here, just a few minutes till we need to wrap up. So I want to talk about successes. And I'm going to give you a couple different categories of successes to track and what you want to have in your goals. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is surface level successes. And so these are things where you have numbers that you can look at that just give you a quick snapshot on the overall activity and engagement of your social feeds. And all of these things I'm going to talk about, I would recommend having a spot in your report for as you are building a report to follow and track your engagement on social media. So one of the biggest obvious ones, followers. Follower growth, understanding what's happening with your followers. Like if you are making sure that you are growing, make sure that people are following you on Facebook and nobody's unliking you or anything like that. But having your follower numbers to give you an idea of what your audience level is that you're going to reach. And that can, obviously you will know how many people like your page, but that is not necessarily how many people will see your posts organically without any boosting or stuff like that. Nowadays, social media channels, especially Facebook, has been known to the point where there are far fewer people who will see your posts these days than they did a few years ago. But despite that, it's still important to have that growth because that will still in some way affect what people are seeing through their pages. Engagement activity. So how many people are liking your posts? How many people are commenting on it? If it offers the ability to share your posts like Twitter and Facebook do. Instagram doesn't, but those ones do. And having clicks on your post that tell you your audience is interacting with you on social media. So that's good stuff because it wouldn't be any fun to just post a bunch of stuff on your wall and then you have no idea whether anybody sees it. You can even see stuff like impressions. Twitter will show you that kind of stuff, the analytics. Facebook will tell you how many times a video was viewed or anything like that. So you can get an idea of what your reach is like and how well you're doing in terms of like getting people to engage with your social media just through those numbers. And last, on the surface level successes, reach activity. So I kind of talked about this already with this last one, but reach activity, so seeing really how many people saw the post show up in their timeline, whether or not they engaged with it, but you understand like, okay, 40 people saw that tweet, even though only 2 people liked it. So you understand at least there's an idea of what is getting out there and promoted, and whether or not they clicked on it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't maybe act on it. So that's going to lead into my next level of success here, and this is one that really has more value in a practical sense outside of social media, and these are your conversion successes. So this is where you are guiding your social audience to take action. from your posts. And this comes back to what I talked about, the idea of having a purpose with your posts when your voice is there, making sure that you're speaking to them and giving them purpose to it. So one of the things could be click-through rates. And so you can monitor this in a lot of social feeds or on Google Analytics or anything like that, where if you are linking them to something on your church website or maybe to a to some outside link outside of social media, whatever that is, you can track that, and then maybe if you have access to whatever the site was, most cases it would probably be your church website, then you can look at that and monitor how much traffic came from social media as a result of those things. So those are things you can all put together to kind of build this story for somebody who's on your social media channel and then comes to your website and then what they do from there. Donations and giving is a big one. So right now, if you are trying to figure out how you can promote a fundraiser or how you can boost giving in the church or something like that, maybe you have an online giving option, hopefully you do, then you can go in and be able to see what that looks like as far as like what activity you get from people who are coming onto your social channels and how effective that is in terms of providing donations and people bringing them aware of a cause or whatever need that your church has and using that as a platform for spreading that. And then lastly on here, and of course this is a big one that I know every pastor is probably going to ask you about and want to like directly see as a result of social media: attendance. This one's trickier. This one is much more difficult to be able to track for certainty because there are so many other variables that take place. Somebody could see a social media post, maybe they saw a sermon that's going on, or maybe they saw something that your church did that was involved with the community, whatever that might have been, and they went, wow, that's a cool church, I'll have to check them out someday, I think. Or if they're coming to a new area and they see your social page and they go, okay, fantastic, oh, and here's their website, oh great, da-da-da, like I'll have to go check it out. So really the only way to know for certain if this is happening, obviously if they directly click on something that tells you like, hey, they're coming and they're here, then you can later follow up with, yep, they came. But in the reality, most time you will probably not be able to do a direct tracking for something like this, other than perhaps asking people who are signing up like a new visitor sheet or anything to that nature, and you can have your social media pages there as options for them to check as to why they came that day. So there could be a variety of different things that take place with that, with conversion successes, but just doing your best to track any instance that you can and being able to report that to your peers or your leaders so you can really see what the successes are that are coming from your social media page. So lots of stuff here to digest. I hope you guys are getting a ton out of this. I know there's so much here. I actually went through and I tried to trim down as much as I could and kind of keep it to very practical, simple steps and simple things that you guys can immediately start with as you go out here from the webinar to get your social media up and running. So I'm going to see here, Chris, I know, has been talking with people on the chat for a while. And so if we want to go ahead, and we've got a few more minutes left so we can do some Q&A. Chris, do you want to switch the camera back over to me, sir? All right, there we go. All right, well, what have been the questions that people have been asking so far?
Well, somebody wanted to know what your church website was.
Somebody wanted to know what my church website was? Okay, yeah, I go to Heritage Christian Fellowship now. So if you go to heritagefellowship.net, you can check out my church's website. I'm not the one who does my church's website at this stage, but yeah, so but feel free to go check it out, though. They have a great site.
Somebody asked what your content calendar looks like.
So a content calendar, the way it'll be labeled on, this is going to be different based on what the software is that you use. But it's a great question. Chris says someone wants to know what that would look like. So based on the software you use, normally it's kind of laid out in a week view. So you can see your timelines for each day. And you can post and you can say like, create a window for yourself. If you're doing this manually and you're kind of just creating something for you to follow as you are posting things manually, then you can kind of create a window and say, you know what, between noon and 3 on this day of the week is when we typically see more people hopping on to do something here on the social media channel. So you can find that window. And this is part of that experimentation phase of posting something and nailing down those days where you really see that engagement at. And you can go online. There are helpful articles that can at least give you a starting point if you're not sure what that would look like. But then I would say just to go ahead and start posting stuff and still be experimental, still try some other times, some other days, and just see how that affects, how that reflects if you notice any change or not. But label that out so you've got just an initial idea of like what you want to post about. So this is what I do. I go, okay, it's Monday. You know what's big on Mondays? Motivation Monday. Hashtag Motivation Monday. Like that's something that people love to see. So, and in fact, you'll actually see this if you go to the Sharefaith Academy Twitter channel, which I highly recommend. Probably the best Twitter channel on them, out there. I mean, that's my take on it. I don't know. But if you go to the Sharefaith Academy Twitter channel, and you'll see on Mondays, we love to post stuff Motivation Mondays, and we always love to post things that are encouraging for leadership on those days. And then Thursdays, Throwback Thursdays, I love to post something like a webinar replay for you guys on there, so you can check out like a previous webinar that we've had or something else that we've talked about in the past and be able to see what that's about. And then I might pepper some other material throughout the week. So, and likewise for a church, having something where you just recognize like, hey, this really resonates with our audience, and picking that topic or that type of post that you want to have and the days, and then of course like separating it out by channel too. So if you are running multiple channels or multiple pages on a channel, then you can break that down and find what content best fits with what. So, but yeah, it's a process that you'll go through. Like I said, kind of maybe if I can try and put this back in a start to finish. Nail down the days and times that you want to start with, find the topics and pieces that you want to post about, and then do that and then repeat based on what your results give you. So I would say that's probably the best plan of action in terms of developing your calendar, your schedule, and then sticking to it. Is there anything else? Okay.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. Okay, good.
Dorinda asks, she said, we don't have a blog, and she's wanted to start one, but she has no idea what to put in it.
Okay.
Especially as a secretary, she doesn't feel like she has the authority or experience to make it work for the church.
So Dorinda's got a great question because she's talking about the blogging aspect we brought up, and it sounds like Dorinda really wants to get something up. I hope I'm saying the name right. Really wants to get something up to be able to have a blog and have some content on. But I can understand too, like the authority side of it. Of course, being your church's website, it is something that you want to talk to your leaders about. You talk to your pastor and let them know that that's something that you feel the church could really benefit from them. And you might want to make a proposal about that. Make them understand how the blog would be used, what the blog's purpose would be. So break it down and say like, hey, if we're going to make a blog, this is going to be the purpose. This is going to be the intent behind it. If it's going to be something where we want to share a devotional, then we have to break down what that looks like in a sense that your leadership can follow with you and be on the same page. And then you can share about like, hey, look, and this is something where it can actually help our social media engagement and our social media stuff as well, because we can share that content. And look, we can actually set this up so we can provide content that keeps people coming back to our website, so our members can actually know where to go if they want to hear or follow a devotional that we're doing. So a devotional can be a part of it. Even something where maybe if you want to get another leader involved to talk about things that are going on at the church as a blog, or just thoughts or things like that. There's lots of things. I would say I don't want to impose what the blog needs to be about, because I think that's something that you and your leadership really need to find and decide what's best for you. But I would seek inspiration. Check out, you can go, there's all these churches out there that are running their own blogs, or even pastors out there who are doing that, and just seeing what kind of stuff that they have out there, and maybe not mimicking, but gleaning what you can from that and understanding what your church would want to read about and putting that out there. Okay.
Kathy asked, or said, from a strategy standpoint, can you talk about factors in deciding which social media to expand to beyond Facebook?
Oh, beyond Facebook? Mm-hmm. Okay, so somebody, I'm sorry, what was her name? Kathy?
Yeah, and she said she had limited resources, which means it's got to be worth her time to reach folks where they really are.
Okay, so here's a great question, and I think this is a great point. Kathy's asking, in terms of using strategy and what factors you're using to determine how you know when it's time to go beyond Facebook. So Facebook is number one, right? Facebook's the big daddy of them all right now with social media, over 1 billion users worldwide. Number two right now in the user count race, if you're going by that, is Instagram with over 500 million users every month. And then following behind that is Twitter at number three, about 300 million users a month. So you don't go just by that though. Don't just go, okay, well this is the biggest, this is the second biggest, or whatever. You have to speak to your audience, right? And it depends on who you're trying to talk to. Now, if you are looking to engage with younger people, and you are looking for a platform that is most suitable for that, statistics are showing that more younger people are more interested in engaging with Instagram over Facebook and the others. Doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have Facebook as well, but we're seeing a pattern where that is becoming more popular with the younger generation. So that could be a trend to watch for to see if that ever comes up to the level or competes with Facebook in terms of users more. And then Twitter, of course, has dropped down a bit. And honestly, it's going to depend on your audience, though. If nobody in your church has a Twitter account, you got to think, like, why would you have a Twitter account then? If nobody in your church is using Instagram, again, it's not just about reaching people in your church, I understand. You want to have a platform that engages other people, but you have to think of who your audience is too. Most people who are on Twitter, I'm following celebrities, I'm following my favorite athletes, I'm following usually like a company or organization and kind of doing stuff on that. Rarely do I personally post to Twitter. That's just my take on it. Others are different. So you have to kind of understand, and maybe by surveying your congregation and understanding where people are, I would say if you're going to take the leap though, and you go, yes, it's time to move to one of these platforms, Instagram is probably my choice as far as something that is uniquely different from Facebook with a good solid user base that you can still see plenty of interaction from. Again, this is something where I would say, especially if you are someone with limited resources, Kathy says that she is, looking into programs like Hootsuite or Grum or Buffer or any of those where you can manage all of that through a single dashboard. So that way your time is not being spent in having to repeat your work over and over and over again, but having a platform that can get as much out as possible to you. Now, Instagram, I mentioned you'd have to use like Grum or something like that to schedule something ahead of time. Hootsuite will not post to Instagram for you, nor will Buffer. So you can kind of look at that too and go, well, if I can add a Twitter account then, and it's not going to be that much more effort for me. Really, once you get something like that set up, my personal take on it is it's not much more effort when you're using software like those are. Then that's something that you can look into to help replicate a lot of the stuff you're doing without having to operate so many different channels and dashboards at once. So that was a really long answer too. Let me try and sum that up as best I can. Look to your congregation and understand what they're already using. Find out who you're trying to talk to. Based on that, go for the audience that has that social media channel. And lastly, totally recommend looking into programs like Hootsuite, Grum, or Buffer that are helpful in terms of getting the word out to multiple channels at once. All right?
All right. Zach, Joe said he thought that he heard you say that they were able to embed our social media feed on their mobile app.
No. So Joe was asking about something I was saying earlier. When I was talking about the embedding social media feeds, that's through your church website, where you can have something like that at. Now through the mobile app, you can still connect your social media in terms of you can use the same posts that are on your website. The cool thing with Sharefaith too is when you post something on your website, you can automatically have it go to your app as well. And then with the other programs we talked about, like with If This and That or any of those, you can set that up to share to social media as well, so you can just cover all your bases in one fell swoop with a blog post. But you're not necessarily saying, in the case of Sharefaith's church app, there's not an option to embed a social feed on that at this time. I don't know if the developers are working on anything that could change that down the road or not. I'm not involved in those conversations. But if something like that becomes capable, we're always keeping users informed whenever new features or updates are available. But yeah, as far as Sharefaith stands, there's no option to embed a social feed in there, just for clarification.
All right. Lori asked us, she said, people at church say they enjoy their Facebook page. but often they read it and enjoy it, but do not comment or like anything.
Okay.
How do we get them to interact?
These people, I tell you what, Lori, they just come, they read it, and then they go. And they just don't share a comment or anything like that. No, well, okay, so here's my thing. I see Chris is like ready to say something.
I cry.
You cry? Yeah, that's how you handle that?
And I start crying, and I'm like, please just post.
So this is a part of process too, where it's teaching your congregation too. It's terms of like, sometimes you just got to go out there and you got to say like, hey, look, like this or like share this to like, spread the word and encourage someone else. Please like and comment on this and share with your friends. You see so many pages that sometimes just resort to that at that point. And whatever it is just a matter of like, however you can encourage your church to be able to share that stuff. You know what? A lot of times, starting off like with yourself and just going in and sharing that post, you can start a chain. I see that happen so many times where I will share something from my church or from some company, and all of a sudden I have like 3 other friends that hop on and do the same exact thing that I do. And then they have friends that start doing the same thing that they do. So that's something that like just being part of the first, sometimes you have to be the first cog in the system to be able to get those gears going and get everybody started on sharing and commenting and everything. And that's just one way to start kind of like silently encouraging that interaction. But apart from that, it's just a matter of understanding some people go on social media and they never do anything. They just like to look. They just like to look and see stuff and then go and never interact. And others will do it if they just understand like, hey, that's going to help the church. That's going to be helpful because other people will see that, and you could be spreading. Your kind of you can tell them it's a form of evangelism. They're sharing the word of God from their church through social media. So whatever you can do to motivate them and inspire them for that. All right, guys, I know a lot of people are still talking with us. Let's do one more question, and then I think we'll have to wrap it up here.
Okay. Angela says their pastor's new.
Okay.
The previous pastor started their Facebook page, but doesn't remember his admin information.
Awesome.
Would you recommend them start a new Facebook page or contact Facebook?
Okay, so there's a couple of good questions there. Angela's asking about they have a new pastor. Their old pastor set up their Facebook page. Now he's gone, and he does not remember how to log in to be able to get into it, which should just be his Facebook login. If he can log into Facebook, but
Crazy.
I'm not sure what's happening there. Kind of fishy. Anyways, not going to suggest that. Anyways, so it's just if for any reason you're not able to access the old Facebook page, it depends on your page. If you have everybody in the church already following it, if you already had some good content on there that people are doing, Google's already got it indexed in searches, then that's tough. I would suggest contacting Facebook and seeing if there's another route that they can do to help you guys get your page back on track. That's really the first approach I would take. Now, if your page didn't really put onto it, not too many people in the church are really following it all that closely, you're confident that you can build those numbers back pretty easily, then I would suggest that it might be time to look at just starting brand new, getting some new stuff up there, new images, new content, and having a strategy in place before you do, just so that it's all continuing like clockwork once you actually get it up and running. Regardless of what happens, you should still do that. As you're building your strategy, having this clear, consistent goals, having this clear, consistent method of engaging people and getting your goals nailed down under the new pastor and under any change that you want to go about with your Facebook page from here on out. But yeah, like I said, if it's something where you already had everybody connected with that one, then I would definitely recommend reaching out to Facebook and hopefully someone there can get you guys squared away and get that taken care of.
I got one more question.
Okay, all right, one more.
Okay.
All right,
this is from Kim Morcom again.
This is for you, Kim.
And she says, do you feel it's effective to pay Facebook to boost posts?
Ooh, that's a good question. So Kim is asking about if you feel it's effective to pay Facebook to boost posts. So here's the thing. Remember what I was talking about with organic reach. That means you're not paying anything. You're just posting something on Facebook, And that's the reach that you get from people who just see it on their timelines already. Now, I've talked about this. There's been a big drop in how many people actually see organic posts anymore these days. And the reality is that with the new Facebook algorithms, only about 6% of your audience will see a post that you put without boosting it. So here's what I would say. So for general things, if you're just sharing something going on at church and you just want to share like a recap of an event, if you want to maybe share a point from a sermon series, overall, those ones, I would not necessarily suggest boosting those posts. Now, if there is something where you have a clear call to action that you want to have someone in your social media audience take advantage of, whether that is perhaps you trying to promote something and raise funds for an event or a need. Maybe that's something where you are trying to boost attendance to an event. Those are the types of things that I would say warrant looking into as boosting, because otherwise you're only going to get about 6% of your current audience without doing that. And that's just people who see it on their timeline, not necessarily engaging with it and interacting with it. And boosting it is not typically expensive, even throwing like $5, $10 on something just for little things here and there. But being mindful of it and understanding like when there's a time for that. And it doesn't mean that other things, like it might be good once in a while to boost like something that just happened from an event, because it's great that other people who maybe who might not be following your page or who maybe don't see as many of your posts can see, oh hey, like that church has great, some stuff that's been going on, and it might be worth reaching out to them and getting plugged in again at some point. That there's so many intangibles to that, but I would say like focus your boosting, if you're going to do any boosted posts, on ones that are going to really see a return in terms of engagement and interaction and have a clear action and purpose to them.
Awesome.
So,
and there's going to be a slide on. Are you going to include the slides in the email?
Yeah. So Chris is just asking. So just to recap on all the stuff that you guys get. Thank you so much, first of all, before I get all into that. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time. I know how crazy how crazy busy it is in the church, and I appreciate you guys coming and spending some time with us today. I hope you guys have been getting a lot of good information from this. I feel like there's been a lot of good information here. I've learned a lot too, just in doing the research and putting everything together for this. Even though I was already involved in social media, there's a lot of good refreshers for me. So I hope you guys are getting that sense too. And then as we get ready to head out here, don't leave yet. I want to pray for everyone before they go. But also, you will get a replay of the webinar. So you guys will have that, so you can re-watch this if you need to, or share it with other people. Feel free to share it on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. And then also, we'll send you guys a complimentary ebook, 10 tips on shepherding through social media. It's got some great advice and ideas in terms of etiquette and things like that, and how you manage your posting. And then lastly, we'll also include the slides that you guys see on the screen too. Those will be included in a PDF for you guys, so you'll get that too. Whew, all right, well, this is fun. I really enjoy this webinar. It was a good time.
It's one of the best webinars ever.
Best ever. And I definitely want to recommend, shameless promotion. Guys, go check out the Twitter channel. If you guys have Twitter, go to Sharefaith Academy's Twitter channel. We post stuff like this all the time. Lots of great tidbits that we talk about from our webinars. Awesome articles, leadership training and motivation. We've really been revamping that, so now there's lots of great new content that we're providing on a consistent basis, and getting that stuff out there for you guys. And feel free to go on there, follow us, tweet at us if you have any questions about stuff, and get the wheels rolling out there about Sharefaith Academy. Let everybody know we got free webinars on all the time. So appreciate you guys so much for taking time. As we get ready to go, I just want to pray for everyone here, and then we'll head out. Father God, thank you God so much for just the opportunity to be able to sit here and hear and learn and speak about communication as a church, and how we can communicate the gospel, how we can invite others into the kingdom, God, and to bring them closer to you. Lord, I know sometimes these things can seem frivolous or unnecessary, and we're not necessarily sure of how they will be used all the time, God, and what they can do to reach others. But God, we know that this tool is here for us, that it's something that is changing the landscape of the way that we communicate with each other. So God, I just ask that you would empower and encourage all of those here with us today who are tuning into this webinar, who are trying to help their churches and help grow their churches and engage their churches, Lord, that you would just give them wisdom and insight and the approach to do that, however best fits their church, God. And Lord, I just ask that this information will have helped them, God, that it will be used by them to be able to reach more for your kingdom. And Lord, we just thank you and we love you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thanks again so much, guys. Appreciate having you. And stay tuned. We'll keep you guys in touch, too, with all the upcoming webinars, too. We got some great ones planned for September. We'll announce those when they're ready. And thank you, guys. Have an awesome day. God bless.